So the data of the channel you can see on screen right now is from a client who is getting to a point where they thought maybe it was time to quit. They believed their videos were good, maybe even better than most in their niche, but it just felt like YouTube was punishing them and they couldn't understand why things weren't moving faster. But that brings us up to this big jump up in views when they suddenly realized what they were doing wrong, made a change and transformed their channel. Now the thing is, that change wasn't the way they made their videos. They didn't focus more on retention, strategies or storytelling. They didn't even buy a fancy new camera. They didn't even do better editing. All they did was make the thing their viewers were really interested in a little bit bigger in their thumbnail, and it helped it get more clicks and resulted in YouTube pushing it. That's it. And that is why, and I can't stress this enough, you have to treat thumbnails as seriously, if not more seriously, than your videos. Now, of course, after you get the click, if your videos aren't great, it's still not that helpful, but I actually find there are a lot of creators out there who are pretty good, and their thumbnails is often the one thing that when they crack, enables them to quit their job and make more sales, and it can really be a big life changer. So how do you get results like that? Well, with more and more people flying into YouTube and competition building daily, there's never been a tougher time to get clicks. And that is why the first step in getting more views is understanding why people click. So we'll look at that next, but first, I need to make sure you know how YouTube works so you avoid the common traps people fall into all of the time, because there's actually a massive problem that might be holding you back, and it's all to do with where videos are discovered on YouTube. So let me explain. YouTube's broken up into different traffic sources. A traffic source is basically where your video is discovered. There's about 10 or 14 of them. I probably should have counted. Anyway, the main ones are search, the homepage, known as browse, and then suggested, which is down the side here of videos, and videos recommended after you've watched one. Each of these traffic sources has its own algorithm. There isn't just one big one. So if your click-through rate is bad in browse, aka the homepage, YouTube won't push it more there. But if it's low there and high in search, it will promote it in search. They're not linked. Which brings us onto the big problem, and it's actually caused by how many of you were taught YouTube and the traffic source search. So search is where most people start out because there's a lot less competition there than on the homepage, for example. And that gives them a lot more of a chance of getting discovered and building an audience until they build up their skills to be able to compete elsewhere. But here comes the big issue. Let's see if you can spot it in these images. Don't worry if you can't. By the end of this course, you definitely will be able to. So nearly all of these videos do amazing in search, but they break the basics of thumbnail design and the rules that I'm going to teach you. So they'll never perform anywhere else. In fact, many of these videos you find in search just treat their thumbnails like titles and plaster them with way too much text and objects, but somehow they still get views. And that's because in search, where you only compete against other videos trying to target the same search term, you might only have to go up against 100 other videos. So lower quality can still prevail. But when it comes to getting traction anywhere else on YouTube, you are up against all of the creators your viewers watch. That could mean you have to get clicks over Ryan Trahan or Mr. Beast, and that is a totally different game. But why is this a problem? Well, firstly, it's a problem because the rules for making thumbnails in search are slightly different to anywhere else. I believe that anyway. You'll learn more about that in another video, but the real problem here is when people trying to find inspiration for their thumbnails, they go to search and they type in the title of their video, and then they look at all of the badly designed thumbnails that will most likely die a death in every other area of YouTube, and then they copy them. So that's the problem. For you to conquer YouTube, you have to understand what makes a great thumbnail and what is awful so that you know what to be inspired by and what to ignore, and that will stop you so you don't fall into the trap of thinking, well, my thumbnail's as good as everyone else's, because just as good as bad is still bad. Now, that is not to say you can't use search to find inspiration for your images, but really what you want to be doing is going to quality channels and looking at what got a ton of views with non-search based titles, and then take inspiration from those thumbnails. Now, this is all going to clear up a lot over the course, so don't worry too much right now. At this stage, you just need to understand that there is a big difference in quality and design in most cases when it comes to search versus, say, the homepage. All right, so let's have a look at a massive concept you want to get to grips with, and it's all about why people click on thumbnails. The power here all lies in these three magic words: attention, relevance, and intrigue. So let me break these down for you. The first thing your thumbnail needs to do is grab someone's attention. And that is why understanding your avatars is so important, because you need to know what would grab their attention visually. For example, if you're a car channel, what do you think is going to achieve that? This photo of a Ferrari 488, or this thumbnail of a Ferrari 488 with someone pulling a stupid face in front of it with a big white line around them and then text over the Ferrari that says Ferrari. We're going to be working hard in the design modules to help you get attention, but this is not as easy as it looks, because how does a channel about something that isn't visual get their viewers' attention, like an accounting channel? Well, that is where understanding what makes your avatars tick is really important. Everyone's channel is going to be different. I can't list the answers for you. You need to figure that out, and that is why research and keeping an eye out for patterns in the best performing thumbnails you see should be an activity you partake in daily. Fear not, there's a video coming that's going to help you do all of this. Putting it simply though, you need to build up a bank of visual elements you can rely on that will jump out at your viewers in a split second, so that when they see it, it doesn't just capture their eye, but also has our second key point: relevance. So you can do a lot of different things to grab attention, but if you get it and then they don't really care about the image, or it doesn't really interest them, they're not going to click. So we could also call relevance interest. Now, entertainment channels like Mr. Beast make images that appeal to a lot of people, but most channels are way more niche. So once again, you always need to be thinking about what you can put in your image to make it feel relevant or interesting for your viewers. For example, a finance channel would use money or a graph in their image, because when the viewer sees it, it'll instantly stick out and have relevance to them, so they'll understand the content of the video more and potentially click. And then we have our final powerful weapon. Have you ever had an itch on your back that you just can't quite reach? So you try everything to get it. A ruler, the corner of the wall, a thingamajig, and everything else you're doing just gets put to one side until you sort it out. This is the effect your thumbnail should have on your potential viewers. And sadly, attention and relevance won't create that feeling on their own. For that to work, you need the final part of our click weapon: intrigue. Now, this is the one that requires the most thought to come up with, but also it's something you have to get used to embracing now, tends to require an element of clickbait. Now, before you shoot this down as something that you really don't want to do, let me just make sure you understand what clickbait actually is. So clickbait is when you make a video that the title and thumbnail isn't really about, or you don't deliver on what the viewer is expecting. It is not clickbait when you use something in your thumbnail that you might not have actually featured in the video. For example, Andre Gique doesn't stand there with his phone out the whole time pointing at his graph just because the thumbnail shows it, right? And the viewers won't feel cheated by this when they watch the video because there's no sign of a phone. And this scene isn't a still from Eric's video. It's totally manufactured, but it's relevant to the story. So in short, a thumbnail doesn't have to be a 100% literal representation of your content. And you'll find there are billions of views to be had by understanding this, because this will give you more creative options to create that itch your viewers really want to scratch. The itch is also known as a curiosity gap, which you might hear me say a lot throughout this course. A curiosity gap is simply creating a gap that people want to fill with information. And it's that powerful feeling that generates millions of clicks. I was always really afraid to try things like this, but let me tell you, if your video is awesome, people don't care. I mean, this is probably my favorite clickbait ever. Ryan Trahan surviving a room. The room didn't look like that. He didn't wear a jumpsuit, and you don't survive sitting in silence. The whole thing is a fabrication. But 20 million views was the result, and nobody cared. And here's a little hack some of the biggest YouTubers in the world to get around clickbait if you're still a little bit worried about it. All they do is they show the thing that is in the thumbnail in the opening few seconds of their video, so the viewer feels satisfied that you didn't clickbait them. Now, this is not a rule, it's just something you can try. It's also worth noting that your title is going to play a really big part in the relevance and intrigue side of this too, but people tend to notice the thumbnail first, so don't rely on the title too much. Oh, and one more thing before we move on, but I really don't want you to get caught up in this too much and think that this is the key to growth. But YouTube's AI actually reads every word in your thumbnail now, and it can understand what's in your image too. So if you put a shoe in it, it knows it's a shoe. It can work out your expression on your face. It can recognize famous people, and it even knows where some photos were taken. It's incredible. It does this to try and understand what your video is all about, but it's also there to keep viewers safe. So YouTube just can't have adult material flooding the platform. So what it will do is it will look at your images to try and identify if the thumbnail contains adult content, and if it thinks it does, it can shut it down. Now, you're welcome to go and test your images in Google's Cloud Vision tool to see what the AI thinks of it. I'll link to that below, but remember, we are making videos for humans here, and if the text is too small, sure, Google might be able to read it, but your viewers won't. So don't fall into the trap of trying to design images to please this robot. It has to be people first. This is just a fail-safe. Okay, so before you move on to the next video, make sure you take the quiz at the bottom of this one to ensure you've understood everything I've said, because it's the foundations of everything else that I'm going to teach you from here. And if you've got any questions, why not ask the community in the Discord and see if they can help.